The air in Memphis in July hung heavy and thick like a wet blanket. It was the kind of heat that stuck to you even at midnight. Sam, just 18, felt it press against him as he pushed a mop across the gleaming linoleum floor of the Piggly Wiggly. He was working the graveyard shift, the quiet hours, when the only sounds were the hum of the refrigerators and the occasional clang of a dropped can. It wasn't glorious work, but it paid for his old beat-up car and helped out at home. His supervisor, Mr. Henderson, a man whose mustache drooped as much as his spirits usually did, was surprisingly spry tonight. He kept checking his watch, then peering out the front doors like he was expecting something. Sam figured it was just Mr. Henderson's usual end of the month. "Inventory anxiety?" Sam asked, leaning on his mop. A bead of sweat trickled down his temple. Mr. Henderson snapped his head around. "Huh? Oh, no, Sam. Just anticipating. You never know what's going to happen around here." He gave a mysterious half-smile that made Sam raise an eyebrow. Sam went back to mopping, wondering what could possibly be so exciting about a grocery store at 1 a.m. Most nights it was just him, Mr. Henderson, and the ghosts of forgotten shopping lists. Then the phone rang. It wasn't the regular store line, it was the private one, the one only. Mr. Henderson answered. His eyes went wide and he snatched it up with an almost frantic energy. "Piggly Wiggly, Henderson speaking," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. He listened for a moment, then his face split into a grin so wide it looked painful. "Yes, sir, we're ready, sir. Absolutely. 20 minutes. We'll be here. Everything you need." He practically slammed the phone back into its cradle. He spun around to face Sam, his eyes sparkling. "Sam, drop that mop. We got a situation." Sam, bewildered, looked from the mop to Mr. Henderson's excited face. "A situation? What kind of situation, Mr. Henderson?" "Did we win the lottery, son?" Mr. Henderson practically danced on the spot. "He's coming. The king is coming." Sam just stared. The king? What was Mr. Henderson talking about? He vaguely knew about a local legend, a whisper among the longtime residents of Memphis, about strange, sudden, massive grocery store purchases in the dead of night. But he'd always thought it was just a tall tale, something old folks made up to amuse themselves. The king? Sam repeated slowly, a knot forming in his stomach. "You mean Elvis?" Mr. Henderson clapped his hands together. "The one and only. He just called. Says he's on his way. He's going to buy us out, Sam, or at least a good chunk of us." Sam felt a strange mix of disbelief and adrenaline. Elvis Presley, the biggest star in the world, the king of rock and roll, was coming to their humble Piggly Wiggly, and not just to buy a gallon of milk, he was going to buy a good chunk of it. What did that even mean? Mr. Henderson was barking orders now, his energy contagious. "We need to clear the aisles, make sure everything's accessible, front doors unlocked. Tell Brenda in bakery to make sure the fresh bread is out, and tell Jimmy in produce to get those cantaloupes looking perfect. Quick, quick." Sam, still reeling, moved on autopilot. He ran to the bakery where Brenda, a woman who looked like she'd been born with flour on her hands, was already humming a tune and pulling fresh loaves from the oven. "Brenda, Mr. Henderson says to make sure the bread's out. Elvis is coming." Brenda just winked. "Already on it, honey. Had a feeling tonight was the night. The phone's been quiet for too long." The casualness in her voice surprised Sam. It was like this happened all the time. He hurried to produce where Jimmy, a wiry guy with a perpetual smirk, was polishing apples. "Jimmy, Elvis is coming. Make sure the produce looks good." Jimmy just chuckled. "He always does, Sam. Just make sure the loading dock is clear. He likes to back right up." Sam felt like he'd stepped into a movie. Everyone seemed to know, to expect this except him. He was the only one who didn't get it. He looked around the brightly lit store, suddenly seeing it with new eyes. Was this the real Memphis legend? Not just a story, but a regular occurrence. He went back to the front, feeling a buzz of anticipation. The air felt different now, charged with something exciting. Mr. Henderson was practically vibrating, pacing back and forth by the big glass doors. "Remember, Sam," Mr. Henderson said. He's a regular guy, just like you and me. Don't stare. Don't ask for autographs. Just be polite efficient, and cool. He thought of the album covers, the screaming fans, the flashy clothes. How could that man just walk into their Piggly Wiggly in the middle of the night? Suddenly, a low rumble started growing louder. It wasn't the sound of a regular car. This was a deep, throaty growl. Like a beast approaching. Sam's heart pounded. He looked out the windows. A pair of headlights, blindingly bright, turned into the parking lot. They belonged to a long, sleek black limousine, so polished it reflected the store lights like a mirror. Behind it, another car and then another. A small convoy of expensive vehicles. They glided to a stop right in front of the entrance. The air seemed to thicken even more, crackling with energy. Sam felt a lump in his throat. This wasn't a legend. This was real. Elvis Presley was a poet. Sam had no idea, but he had a feeling his night was about to get a whole lot more interesting. He just hoped he didn't mess anything up. This was Memphis after all, and the king was in town. The limousine door opened, and a large man in a dark suit, his face unreadable, stepped out first. He looked around, surveying the parking lot, then the store entrance. He gave a slight nod, and then from the back of the limo emerged a figure that made Sam's breath catch in his throat. He was taller than Sam expected, even in his mind. He wore a crisp white jumpsuit, not one of the flashy stage ones, but a simple, almost elegant version, unzipped halfway down his chest, revealing a gold chain. His hair was meticulously styled, dark and slick, catching the dim parking lot lights. And those eyes, blue, intense, scanning the world around him with an almost regal air. He strode towards the automatic doors, followed by a couple more men equally large and watchful. Sam felt Mr. Henderson nudge him a silent reminder to get to work. Sam stood a little straighter, his hands clenching and unclenching, trying to look busy and important, not like a stunned kid. Elvis walked into the store, and the air inside seemed to hum. It wasn't just the refrigerators anymore. He paused just inside the entrance, taking a moment to look around, his gaze sweeping over the aisles, the shelves packed with everyday items. For a moment, he looked like anyone else stepping into a grocery store, a person with a shopping list. But then he smiled, a quick, almost shy curve of his lips, and it was the smile that launched 1,000 screens. "Good evening, gentlemen." Elvis's voice was deeper than Sam expected. A warm, resonant drawl. Mr. Henderson practically bowed. "Yes, King. Mr. Presley, welcome. We're honored to have you." He was practically beaming. His usual gruff demeanor completely melted away. Elvis chuckled. A low, easy sound. "Just Elvis is fine, Mr. Henderson. And the honor's all mine. You folks keep a fine establishment here." He looked at Sam, and for a fleeting moment their eyes met. Sam felt a jolt, as if he'd been seen, truly seen, by someone legendary. Quickly looked away, suddenly fascinated by a display of canned peaches. "All right, boys," Elvis said, turning to his entourage. "Let's get to it. You know the drill. Take 2 carts each. And remember, get a little bit of everything. Don't be shy." The men, who Sam realized were probably members of the famous Memphis Mafia, nodded and grabbed shopping carts. They fanned out into the aisles, surprisingly methodical. One headed for frozen foods, another for dairy, a third for canned goods. It wasn't a chaotic grab and dash. It was an organized operation. Elvis, meanwhile, headed straight for the snack aisle, picked up a bag of potato chips, examined it, then tossed it into his cart. Then a box of Nilla wafers, and then, to Sam's astonishment, he reached for a giant jar of pickles. "Excellent," Elvis murmured. "Nothing beats a good bologna sandwich late at night." Sam almost snorted. The king of rock and roll, eating bologna sandwiches, it was so normal, and yet entirely surreal. As the shopping carts filled, the Memphis Mafia members brought them to the checkout. Sam, on Mr. Henderson's instruction, was bagging. He was fast and efficient, but his hands trembled slightly as he handled items that Elvis himself had touched. The items piled up on the conveyor belt: boxes of cereal, jugs of milk, loaves of bread, packages of meat, bags of vegetable, gallons of ice cream, and an incredible amount of soda. "Is this for a party, Mr. Presley?" Sam finally blurted out, unable to hold back his curiosity. He immediately regretted it, remembering Mr. Henderson's warning. Elvis paused, looking at Sam, a slight smile playing on his lips. "You could say that, son," he said, his voice soft. "A never-ending party in a way." He didn't elaborate, just winked, and then turned his attention back to the growing mountain of groceries. The total came to an astronomical number, far more than Sam had ever seen processed in one go. Elvis pulled out a thick wad of cash, seemingly unconcerned by the amount. He paid Mr. Henderson, counting out the bills with surprising care. "Keep the change, Mr. Henderson," Elvis said, handing over a few extra $100 bills. "For your trouble, and for these fine young men working so hard." He gestured toward Sam and the other few night shift employees who are now helping bag and load. Sam felt a flush of warmth. A $100 bill was more than he made in a week. He risked a glance at Mr. Henderson, who nodded, indicating it was okay to accept. As the last of the groceries were loaded into the vehicles, a process that took several trips back and forth, requiring the Piggly Wiggly's largest carts, Elvis stood by the entrance, surveying the scene. He looked tired, but there was a deep satisfaction in his eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," Elvis said, shaking his hand firmly. "You always come through. Anytime, King," Mr. Henderson replied, still beaming. Elvis then turned to Sam, who was standing awkwardly with a half-empty cart. "Keep working hard, Sam. You got good hands." With that, Elvis turned and walked back to his limousine. The doors closed and the convoy of cars rumbled to life, slowly pulling out of the parking lot and disappearing into the Memphis night. The silence that followed felt enormous. Sam stood there, his hands still tingling, looking at the suddenly barren shelves and the almost empty aisles he had just witnessed the legend. And it was more incredible, more real than any story could describe. He looked at Mr. Henderson, who was still smiling, almost in a daze. "Well, Sam," Mr. Henderson said, breaking the silence, "told you it was better than the lottery." Sam just nodded, unable to form words. He had a $100 bill in his pocket, a tingling hand, and a new understanding of what Memphis legend truly meant, and he couldn't help but wonder, where did all that food go? The next morning, the Piggly Wiggly looked like it had been hit by a very organized, very polite tornado. Empty shelves, bare displays. It was a strange sight to behold in a fully stocked grocery store. Sam, still reeling from the night's events, spent his day off trying to process it all. He tried to explain it to his mom, but she just smiled knowingly. "Oh, Elvis, yeah, he does that sometimes. He's a good boy, that one." Her casualness made it seem like she was talking about a neighbor, not the biggest music star in the world. It was then Sam realized just how deeply ingrained Elvis was in the fabric of Memphis. He wasn't just a celebrity, he was part of the family, an eccentric, generous, larger-than-life uncle. Still, the question nagged at Sam. Where did all that food go? It wasn't like one man could eat 100 loaves of bread and 50 gallons of milk. And the never-ending party comment Elvis had made, it didn't quite make sense for Graceland alone. The next night, back at the Piggly Wiggly, Sam found himself restocking the aisles that Elvis had depleted. As he piled cans of peaches back onto shelves, he overheard Mr. Henderson on the phone again. "Yes, Mr. Jenkins, of course. Right after our regular shipment, he cleared us out last night. You know, but we're getting new stock in this afternoon. Plenty for everyone, Mr. Jenkins." Sam vaguely remembered that name. He was the director of the main community food bank. Downtown, a light bulb went off in Sam's head. Could it be? Was that where the food went? Sam decided to do a little detective work. During his lunch break, he drove his old car downtown to the address of the Memphis Community Food Bank. It was a modest building, tucked away on a side street, not far from the main bustling thoroughfares. As he pulled up, he saw something that made his jaw drop. There, parked outside, was one of the black limousines from last night. And Just as Sam watched, two men, undoubtedly from Elvis's entourage, were inside unloading boxes of food. Not just a few boxes, but huge industrial-sized containers, cans, dried goods, even fresh produce, wrapped carefully. Sam watched, hidden behind a large oak tree across the street. He saw other people arriving, not in fancy cars, but on foot, some pushing old grocery carts, others with worn shopping bags. They were families, elderly people, individuals who looked like they were struggling. A woman with kind eyes and a tired face came out of the food bank. Sam recognized her as Mrs. Clara, a volunteer he'd seen at his church's charity drives. She was shaking hands with the men from the limo, her face full of gratitude. "Tell Mr. Presley, thank you again," Mrs. Clara said, her voice carrying across the street. "He's truly a blessing. So many families would go hungry without his help." One of the men, a burly guy with a gentle smile, nodded. "He said you were running low on canned goods. We got you covered for a while, Mrs. Clara." Sam felt a lump form in his throat. This was it. This was the answer. The midnight buyouts weren't for a party. They were for the people of Memphis. Elvis wasn't just buying out a grocery store. He was quietly, generously feeding his community. He watched for another few minutes as more people lined up, patiently waiting for their turn to collect provisions. There was no fanfare, no media, no grand announcement. It was just a quiet act of kindness done under the cover of night, delivered without fuss. Sam drove back to the Piggly Wiggly feeling a mixture of awe and profound respect. The Elvis he had seen last night wasn't just the king of rock and roll. He was the king of hearts, a man who hadn't forgotten where he came from. He remembered what it was like to be hungry, to struggle, and he was using his incredible wealth to make sure others didn't have to experience that. When he clocked in for his shift that evening, Mr. Henderson was in a surprisingly good mood, whistling a tune as he restocked the deli counter. "Mr. Henderson," Sam began, trying to sound casual. About last and topped whistling, his eyes twinkling. "Ah, the King's Bounty, eh, Sam?" Sam nodded. "I saw one of his cars at the food bank today, downtown." Mr. Henderson smiled, a knowing, gentle smile. "Ah, so you figured it out. Did you good for your son? Most folks just think he's throwing a big party, but that's Elvis always has been. He never forgets the folks who need a hand. He just buys it all and gives it away," Sam asked, still trying to grasp the sheer scale of it. "Every time," Mr. Henderson confirmed. "He likes to make sure the store is fully stocked first, so it's fresh. Then he buys it all up, and his boys take it around to the various shelters, food banks, church pantries, keeps them going for weeks, sometimes months." Sam leaned against a shelf, a profound sense of understanding washing over him. The late-night secrecy wasn't about avoiding fans. It was about avoiding a spectacle. It was about pure, unadulterated giving, without the need for applause or recognition. "He's a good man, Sam," Mr. Henderson said softly, looking out at the rows of restocked shelves. "A really good man. And that's the real Memphis legend right there." Sam thought of the hundreds of dollars Elvis had given him and the others just for working. It wasn't just about the food, it was about the spirit behind it. A sudden warmth spread through him, pushing back the lingering summer heat. He felt proud to be a part of this, even in a small way. He was witnessing history, not just the kind in magazines, but the kind that lived in the hearts of a city. And he knew deep down that this was just the beginning of what he'd learned from the king. Weeks turned into a month, and Sam continued his night shifts. The Piggly Wiggly slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but for Sam, nothing was quite the same. He saw the shelves not just as products, but as potential sustenance for those in need. Every carton of milk, every loaf of bread held a new significance. He often found himself thinking about Elvis, the man he'd briefly met. The legend on stage was one thing, but the quiet, generous man in the grocery store was another. Entirely. Sam wondered what it was like to live a life so grand, yet remain so grounded. Then one quiet Tuesday night, the private line rang again. Mr. Henderson answered, and the familiar spark lit up his eyes. "He's coming, Sam. An hour. Get ready." This time Sam felt a surge of excitement, Not just nervousness, he knew the drill. He and the others sprang into action, clearing aisles, checking stock, getting everything ready for the king's visit. Precisely an hour later, the black limousine pulled up. The same convoy of cars, the same burly men, and then Elvis himself, stepping out into the humid Memphis night. Tonight, he was wearing a simple dark blue shirt and jeans, looking even more like a regular person, albeit a very famous and well-dressed one. He greeted Mr. Henderson, nodding to the other employees, including Sam. There was a comfortable familiarity this time. It wasn't the first time Sam had seen him, but it was still incredible. The shopping began. The Memphis Mafia members fanning out, systematically filling their carts. Elvis, as usual, started in the snack aisle, but then he drifted towards the fresh produce. Sam was in the produce section, neatly arranging a display of ripe tomatoes. Elvis stopped near him, picking up a bright red apple. "These look good, son," he said, turning it over in his hand. "They're fresh off the truck this morning, Mr. Presley," Sam replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Elvis took a bite of the apple, crunching into it with a satisfied sigh. "Nothing beats a fresh apple, you know. When I was a kid, a good apple was a treat. We didn't always have a lot." Sam looked up, surprised by the sudden personal comment. "Really, sir?" Elvis nodded, his gaze distant for a moment. "Oh yeah, my Mama Gladys, she worked so hard. We grew up poor in Tupelo. Real poor. Sometimes we went without. Sometimes we depended on the kindness of others, on folks sharing what little they had. You never forget that feeling, Sam. The feeling of an empty stomach, or the feeling of someone reaching out to help when you got nothing." Sam listened, mesmerized. It was a rare glimpse into the man behind a legend, a vulnerability he never expected. It made sense now, his generosity. It was about remembering. "So you just want to make sure others don't feel that?" Sam asked quietly. Elvis looked at him, his blue eyes intense. "Exactly, Sam. It's not just about the food. It's about letting folks know someone cares, that even when things are tough, there's always hope. A little bit of hope can go a long way, especially when it comes in a paper bag full of groceries." He gave a wry smile. "And a whole lot of peanut butter and banana sandwiches." Sam chuckled, imagining the king eating those famous sandwiches. "My grandma makes a mean peanut butter and banana sandwich." Elvis's smile widened. "She sounds like a good woman. Hold on to those memories, Sam. They're precious." He moved on, then pushing his cart. But the quiet conversation lingered. Sam felt a profound connection to the man. Elvis wasn't just a rich celebrity doing a good deed. He was a man who understood hardship, who remembered his roots, and who used his incredible platform to spread kindness. As the grocery carts piled high at the checkout, Sam worked diligently, bagging each item with care. He felt a renewed purpose. He wasn't just bagging groceries. He was bagging hope, comfort, and a silent message of care. When it came time to load the cars, Sam helped carry boxes and bags, working alongside the Memphis Mafia members. Elvis stood by the main doors, overseeing the operation, making sure everything was accounted for. "Elvis," Sam ventured, as he passed him with a heavy box of canned goods. "Thank you for everything, for what you do." Elvis stopped him with a gentle hand on his arm. He looked at Sam, his eyes warm. Sam felt a blush creep up his neck. Coming from Elvis, those words felt like a blessing. As the last of the food was loaded and Elvis climbed back into his limousine, Sam watched him go, not just as a fan, but as someone who had glimpsed the true character of a man stripped away from the glitz and glamour. The store was quiet again, the shelves once more sparsely stocked, but the air still hummed with the memory of the king's presence, and for Sam, the memory of a quiet conversation that had changed his perspective on not just Elvis, but on life itself. He wasn't just a grocery store clerk anymore. He was part of the Memphis story, a witness to a legend woven, not just from music, but from genuine, heartfelt generosity. Quiet conversation with Elvis in the produce aisle had been a turning point for Sam. It wasn't just about witnessing the legend, it was about understanding the man. Elvis's words about his childhood, about hunger, and about the kindness of strangers resonated deeply with Sam. It painted a picture far richer than any magazine article or song lyrics ever could. From that night on, Sam approached his job with a new sense of purpose. He found himself looking forward to the phone call, to the deep rumble of a limo's engine. Each late-night buyout wasn't just a shift, it was a mission. He knew that every can of beans he stacked, every loaf of bread he bagged, was going to someone who needed it. Someone who, like Elvis once, might be going without. One particularly hot night, even for Memphis, the phone rang. It was Mr. Henderson's signal. This time Sam felt a calm excitement, a sense of anticipation for what the night would bring. When Elvis arrived, he looked a little more tired than usual. The lines around his eyes a bit deeper. He wore a simple tracksuit tonight, looking more like a regular guy running errands than a global superstar. As the Memphis Mafia went about their methodical shopping, Elvis lingered near the checkout, sipping a soda. Sam was ringing up items, humming along to the soft rock and roll playing on the store's speakers. "You like that song, Sam?" Elvis asked, surprising him. "Yeah, Mr. Presley, it's a classic," Sam replied, then added, "You're a legend, sir." Elvis gave a small, almost sad smile. "Legend's a heavy word, Sam. Sometimes I just want to be a regular guy, you know, just a man trying to do some good in the world." He paused, looking around the store. "Gets lonely at the top, they say, and it's true. People see the lights, the crowds, the money. They don't see the quiet nights, the wondering if you're making a difference." Sam found himself listening intently. This was a deeper conversation than he'd expected. Sam asked, gesturing vaguely at the mountain of groceries piling up. "I mean, really, why, you could just donate money, or have other people do all this." Elvis took a sip of his soda, his gaze distant. "Money's easy, Sam. Too easy sometimes. It feels disconnected. This is real. I get to see it. I get to be a part of it. I get to pick out the things I know folks need, or maybe just a little treat they wouldn't normally get." He pointed to a box of chocolate donuts in a passing cart. "Everyone deserves a donut once in a while, even when times are tough," he continued, his voice soft, almost a whisper. "When I was a kid, we were hungry a lot. I told you that my mama, she'd try her best, but there were nights I remember laying in bed, stomach aching, dreaming of a full meal, sometimes someone from the church or a kind neighbor. They'd repress, and when things changed for me, when the money started coming in, the first thing I thought about was making sure my family, never once thought about all the other families like mine. The ones struggling right here in Memphis. This city gave me so much, Sam. It gave me a home. It gave me my stone. It gave me my start. How could I not give back?" He leaned against the counter, looking at Sam with genuine earnestness. "It's not about fame. It's not about being a legend. It's about remembering what it felt like to have nothing and making sure others have something. It's about being grateful for what I have and sharing that blessing. It's about being human, Sam. Just being human." Sam felt a wave of emotion wash over him. It wasn't just a story now. It was a personal confession, a glimpse into the very core of Elvis Presley. He wasn't just a superstar. He was a man driven by empathy, by a powerful memory of hardship that fueled his boundless generosity. That's really something, sir." Sam managed, his voice thick with emotion. Elvis smiled, the genuine, warm smile. "It's just the right thing to do, Sam. Simple as that." He paused, then added, "And honestly, sometimes it's the only time I feel truly at peace, away from the crowds, the demands. Just me, some groceries, and the thought of folks getting a good meal. That's a good feeling." As the last of the groceries were loaded into the vehicles, Elvis extended his hand to Sam. "Thanks for everything, Sam. You and Mr. Henderson, you make this easy." "Anytime, Mr. Presley," Sam said, shaking his hand, the firm grip a comforting presence. As Elvis's convoy pulled away, leaving the quiet hum of the refrigerators as the only sound, Sam looked around the nearly empty store. The shelves, once full, now echoed with the story of a man who never forgot his roots. King of rock and roll. Yes, but more importantly, a man who believed in the power of a full stomach and a kind heart. Sam felt a deep satisfaction settle over him. He was no longer just a grocery store clerk. He was a small, quiet part of a magnificent act of kindness that rippled through the heart of Memphis, and knowing the why made all the difference in the world. He felt like he understood Memphis better, and he understood himself better too. This wasn't just a job anymore, it was a mission. Life went on, a familiar rhythm of schoolwork and the occasional exhilarating late-night visit from the king. Sam had settled into his role not just as an employee, but as a silent participant in Elvis's unique philanthropy. He often wondered about the people who received the food, the unseen beneficiaries of Elvis's generosity. Then life threw Sam a curveball. His younger sister Sarah, who was only 10, suddenly fell ill. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious enough to require multiple doctor visits, tests, and medication. Sam's mom, already working 2 jobs, was stretched thin. The medical bills started piling up quickly, outstripping their modest income. Sam's grocery store wages, which usually covered his car and a few extras, now went straight to the family fund, barely making a dent. Sam started picking up extra shifts, trying to earn every penny he could. He was exhausted, worried, and felt the weight of his family's struggles pressing down on him. The late-night shifts, once exciting, now felt like a heavy burden. One Tuesday, when the air was particularly muggy, and Sam felt a familiar private line, Mr. Henderson's face lit up, but Sam felt a pang of dread. He was so tired. He's coming tonight, Sam, Mr. Henderson announced, oblivious to Sam's Mr. Henderson announced, oblivious to Sam's inner turmoil. Sam nodded, forcing a tired smile. His mind was elsewhere, though preoccupied with Sarah's coughs, the doctor's furrowed brow, the ever-growing stack of bills on the kitchen table. When Elvis arrived, he was dressed casually, a simple blue button-down shirt and black pants. He seemed to notice something was off with Sam right away. Maybe it was the shadows under his eyes, or the way he moved a little slower than usual. "Evening," Sam, Elvis said. As he walked past him in the produce aisle, his voice was warm, but his eyes held a hint of concern. "Everything all right? You look a little down tonight." Sam hesitated. He wasn't one to air his family's troubles, especially not to someone like Elvis. "Just a long week, Mr. Presley," he mumbled, turning his attention back to straightening a display of oranges. Elvis didn't press. He just nodded slowly and continued his shopping, but Sam felt his gaze linger for a moment too long. As the evening progressed, the usual flurry of activity filled the store. Carts overflowed, the Memphis Mafia moved efficiently, and Sam bagged groceries almost mechanically. When he got to the checkout, Elvis was already there, overseeing the process, his eyes sharp. "Mr. Henderson," Elvis said, "I think we'll need a little extra tonight. Double up on the fresh produce and make sure we get plenty of the good stuff from the bakery. Maybe some of those fancy cookies." Mr. Henderson, surprised by the last-minute change, quickly adjusted the order, calling out to Brenda in the bakery and Jimmy in produce. Sam bagged the extra items, wondering why the sudden change. Elvis usually had a pretty standard list. When the total was calculated, it was even higher than usual, thanks to the added items. Elvis pulled out his cash. A thicker wad than Sam had ever seen. He counted out the bills. Then, with a subtle glance at Sam, he added a few more $100 bills to the stack. "And Mr. Henderson," Elvis said, his voice carrying just enough for Sam to hear clearly, "tonight, let's make it a little something extra for the team, for all their hard work, especially for Sam here. He looks like he could use a pick-me-up." Mr. Henderson's eyes widened slightly, acknowledging the unspoken message. "Of course, Mr. Presley. Always a pleasure." Sam felt a flush of heat rise to his face. He knew what that meant. Elvis had noticed he was giving them more and specifically acknowledging Sam. It wasn't charity. It was a quiet, dignified way of offering help, without making a spectacle. As the last of the food was loaded, Elvis walked over to Sam, who was wiping down the now empty checkout conveyor belt. "You really are a hard worker, Sam," Elvis said, his voice gentle. "And you got a good spirit. Hold on to that. Times can get tough, but a good spirit and hard work, they'll see you through." He paused, his blue eyes meeting Sam's. "And remember, Sam, you're not alone. We all got struggles. It's okay to let folks help you sometimes." He gave Sam a brief, warm smile, then turned and walked out to his waiting limousine. Sam stood there, a lump in his throat. He understood. Elvis hadn't directly asked about Sarah or the bills, but he had seen Sam's weariness, his burden, and he had responded in the only way he knew how, with quiet, generous kindness. Mr. Henderson came over, a knowing look on his face. "Sam," he said, handing him an envelope, "Elvis's extra thanks for tonight. He really appreciates you." Inside the envelope, Sam found several $100 bills, more than he had made in a month. It was enough to cover a significant portion of Sarah's medication. Tears pricked at Sam's eyes. He had worried about the exhaustion, about the mounting bills. But Elvis the King, the legend, had seen him. He hadn't just bought food for the hungry of Memphis. He had personally, quietly, offered a helping hand to a struggling young man who worked for him. That night, Sam slept deeper than he had in weeks. The financial worry hadn't disappeared entirely, but a heavy weight had lifted. He felt seen, cared for, and understood. The generosity of Elvis wasn't just a grand gesture for the city. It was a deeply personal act of compassion that reached down and touched individual lives, including his own. He knew now more than ever that the King's heart was as big as his legend. The extra money from Elvis helped immensely with Sarah's medical bills, and slowly a sense of calm returned to Sam's home. His sister started to improve, and Sam felt a profound gratitude for the quiet, unexpected help from a man who barely knew him. It wasn't just the money. It was the kindness, the feeling of being noticed and supported. Sam continued working his shifts, and the Piggly Wiggly became more than just a job. It was a place where generosity manifested itself, where a legend quietly changed. He started talking more with Mr. Henderson, learning more about Elvis's history of giving. Mr. Henderson shared stories of Elvis buying cars for strangers, paying off mortgages, and spontaneously helping people he met. "He just has a way of knowing, you know," Mr. Henderson would say, shaking his head in wonder. "He feels it. Someone's hurting, someone's struggling, he just knows and he acts." Sam knew it was true. He had experienced it himself. One warm Saturday afternoon, Sam was driving through a less affluent part of Memphis, on his way to visit a friend. He passed a small community center, and something made him slow down. Parked outside were two familiar black limousines. Curiosity piqued, Sam pulled over and watched. People were gathered, forming a line, not a desperate mob, but an orderly, patient queue. And from the back of the limos, Elvis's men were unloading boxes of food. It was the same organized process Sam had seen at the Piggly Wiggly, but now he was seeing the other end of it. He saw elderly women with worn shopping bags, young mothers with children clinging to their skirts, men in working clothes looking tired but hopeful. There was a quiet hum of conversation, a sense of shared experience. Then Sam saw Elvis himself. He was standing near the entrance of the community center, not unloading boxes but greeting people. He wasn't on stage or performing, he was just listening. He bent down to speak to a small child, ruffling her hair, put a hand on the shoulder of an older man, chatting with him for a moment. He offered a warm smile to a young woman, and she smiled back, her face lighting up. He wasn't posing for cameras. There were no reporters, no fan frenzy, just quiet, genuine interaction. Sam realized this was the never-ending party Elvis had spoken of. It wasn't a party of celebration, but a party of sustenance, of connection, of shared humanity. He saw a boy, probably no older than 10, approach Elvis holding a small tattered book. Elvis took the book, listened intently as the boy spoke. Then he signed it, not with a flourish, but with a simple personal message. The boy walked away, his face beaming, holding the book like it was made of gold. Sam saw how Elvis's presence wasn't just about the food. It was about hope. It was about showing up, being present, connecting with the community that had nurtured him. He was a symbol of success, yes, but also a symbol of someone who hadn't forgotten where he came from, who was still one of them. Later that evening, back at the Piggly Wiggly, Sam felt a renewed sense of pride in his work. He was part of this chain of kindness. He was a small, crucial link in a system that brought food and hope to thousands of people in his city. He found Mr. Henderson stocking soda. "Mr. Henderson," Sam said, "I saw Elvis today at the community center." Mr. Henderson nodded, not surprised. "Ah, yes. He likes to stop by there when he can, sees the faces, makes sure it's reaching the right folks. He just talks to them," Sam said, still marveling. "Like he's just another neighbor. That's because he is, Sam," Mr. Henderson said. "Deep down, he's just a Memphis boy. Always will be. And that's why folks here love him so much. It's not just the music. It's the heart." Sam thought about the boy with the signed book, the old man sharing a moment with Elvis, the quiet dignity of the line. It wasn't charity that felt like pity. It was an act of genuine community, of shared humanity. He thought about the late-night buyouts, the seemingly eccentric behavior of a superstar. But it wasn't eccentric. It was deliberate. It was a carefully constructed system of giving, designed to be quiet, efficient, and deeply personal. It preserved the dignity of both the giver and the receiver. Sam felt the swell of warmth. He was living in a city with a king who truly cared for his people, who used his blessings to be a blessing to others. It was a beautiful thing to witness, to be a part of. And he knew deep in his heart that this was the real story of Elvis Presley, the one that went beyond the headlines and the screaming fans, the one that lived in the hearts of Memphis. Not everyone saw Elvis's late-night grocery store buyouts in the same heartwarming light Sam did. Rumors always swirled around Elvis, the kind of whispers that followed anyone so famous. Some gossiped about his eccentricities, his lavish spending, his strange habits. Sam often overheard snippets from customers during his daytime shifts, or from other employees who hadn't been there for a buyout. "Did you hear about Elvis buying out the Piggly Wiggly again? What a waste of money. Must be throwing another crazy party. He's just showing off, you know. Rich people do that. They say he just piles it all up and gives it to his cronies at Graceland." Sam would listen to these comments, a quiet frustration building inside him. They didn't understand. They saw the spectacle, not the substance. They saw the legend, not the man with a big heart and a deep memory of poverty. One afternoon, a local reporter, a slick-haired man named Mr. Finch, came into the Piggly Wiggly. He was known for his sensational stories. He interviewed Mr. Henderson, asking pointed questions about the cost of the buyouts, the amount of food, and hinting at extravagance. Sam, stocking canned goods nearby, could hear everything. "So, Mr. Henderson," Finch said, his voice dripping with insinuation, "Elvis Presley buying out entire grocery stores in the dead of night, Sari. All that food, surely it can't all be consumed by one household." Mr. Henderson, usually so open, suddenly became cagey. "Mr. Presley is a generous man, Mr. Finch. He pays his bills and he contributes to the local economy. But where does it all go?" Finch pressed, his tone skeptical. "Is it for his personal consumption? Or is there some other, perhaps less benevolent purpose?" Mr. Henderson just smiled tightly. "That, Mr. Finch, is Mr. Presley's business, and our business is selling groceries. And he's a very good customer." Finch left clearly dissatisfied. Sam felt a surge of relief that Mr. Henderson hadn't revealed the truth. It was a testament to the quiet trust Elvis placed in the store and its employees. Later, Sam approached Mr. Henderson. "Why didn't you tell him, Mr. Henderson, about the food bank?" Mr. Henderson sighed, wiping down the counter. "Because, Sam, Elvis doesn't do it for the headlines. He does it because it's right. If we start shouting about it, then it becomes a publicity stunt. He keeps the dignity for the people receiving the food, and it keeps his intention pure. He looked at Sam, his eyes serious. Sometimes, the most important good deeds are the ones done in secret, the ones that don't seek praise. That's the real Elvis, Sam. Not the flashy one on stage, but the quiet one who remembers what it's like to be hungry. Sam nodded, understanding. He remembered Elvis's words. It's not about fame. It's about remembering. The secret nature of the buyouts wasn't about avoiding fans. It was about preserving the genuine spirit of giving. That night, as he mopped the floors, Sam thought about the contrast between the rumors and the reality. He felt a deep appreciation for the true story he was witnessing. It was a story of quiet compassion, of a celebrity who used his immense platform not for ego, but for genuine care. A few days later, Mr. Finch's article appeared in the local paper. It was titled, "The King's Midnight Shopping Sprees, Extravagance or Philanthropy." The article detailed the huge sums Elvis spent at grocery stores, implying wasteful behavior, but without concrete proof. It painted him as eccentric, perhaps even irresponsible, but couldn't quite pin down any wrongdoing. Sam read it, and he just shook his head. They didn't get it. They never would, unless they were there in the quiet of the night, seeing Elvis's eyes light up when he picked out a bag of cookies for someone who might not otherwise get a treat. They didn't see him quietly helping Sarah, or talking about his own humble beginnings. He wished he could tell the world, but he knew why he couldn't. The beauty of Elvis's giving was in its anonymity, its pure intention, and that in itself was a powerful statement. Sam learned a valuable lesson that week. True generosity doesn't seek a spotlight. It just is. And that made the legend of Elvis Presley, the grocery store king, even more captivating, even more real to him. It was about the heart, and Sam was proud to be a quiet witness to that heart. Years passed. Sam finished high school, then college, all while continuing to work at the Piggly Wiggly, first part-time, then full-time. He moved up the ranks, becoming a shift supervisor, then assistant manager. Mr. Henderson, growing older, eventually retired, passing the torch to Sam. The Piggly Wiggly was Sam's now, in a way. Throughout those years, the midnight calls continued. Less frequent sometimes due to Elvis's touring or health, but always consistent. The black limousines would still pull up, the familiar faces of the Memphis Mafia would still enter, and Elvis himself would still walk the aisles, usually more subdued now, but with the same quiet determination in his eyes. Sam had learned to anticipate the calls, to have the store ready. He knew Elvis's preferences. His subtle nods that indicated a particular item was needed more than usual. Their interactions became even more familiar, comfortable. Sometimes Elvis would ask Sam about his life, his studies, his family. Sam would tell him about Sarah, who was now healthy and thriving, thanks in part to that unexpected helping hand. All those years ago, "You're doing good, Sam," Elvis would say, his voice a little softer now, sometimes a touch weary. "You got a good head on your shoulders and a good heart." Sam would feel a swell of pride. Those words coming from Elvis meant the world to him. The tradition of the midnight buyouts became a quiet, comforting constant in Memphis. It was known, whispered about, but never exploited. It was part of the city's soul, a testament to its most famous son's enduring connection to his roots. The food banks and community centers relied on it, a lifeline that always appeared when needed most. Sam, now a respected figure at the Piggly Wiggly, made sure the new hires understood the unspoken rules. When Elvis comes, he'd tell them, "You treat him with respect. He's not just a customer, he's family. And what he does here, it's important. It feeds this city." He saw the legend of Elvis grow. But for Sam, the true legend wasn't just the music. It was the man who, despite unimaginable fame and wealth, never forgot the feeling of hunger and dedicated himself to ensuring others didn't have to experience it. It was a legacy, built on bologna sandwiches and canned goods, delivered with a quiet grace. One late night, Elvis came in, looking more tired than Sam had ever seen him. His movements were slower, his smile not quite as bright. He walked the aisles with a cane, his steps measured. His usual energy, the spark that lit up the room, seemed diminished. "Rough night, Mr. Presley?" Sam asked gently as Elvis paused by the fruit display. Leaning on his cane, Elvis sighed. "Just tired, Sam. The road takes a lot out of you. And sometimes the world just feels heavy." He looked at Sam, a profound sadness in his eyes. "But then I come here and I see all this food and I think about all the folks who will get a good meal. And it makes it all worthwhile." Paused, then looked around the store, his gaze lingering on the fully stocked shelves. "You've kept this place running well. Sam Henderson would be proud. I know I am." Sam felt a lump in his throat. It was a moment of quiet understanding, a recognition of their shared purpose. Elvis was tired, perhaps burdened by the demands of his life, but his heart, that generous, remembering heart, was still beating strong. As the buyout concluded, Elvis paid Mr. Henderson. Sam now handled the final transaction himself and lingered a moment longer than usual. He shook Sam's hand, a little weaker than before, but still warm. "Thank you, Sam," Elvis said, his voice soft, "for everything, for keeping this going." He gave a wistful smile. "Don't ever forget what we do here. It matters." Then he turned and slowly walked to his limousine, a figure both monumental and vulnerable. Sam watched him go, a sense of foreboding settling in his chest. He didn't know why, but that night felt different. It felt like an ending, or at least a significant chapter closing. But even as the cars drove away, Sam knew the legacy wasn't ending. It was continuing, ingrained in the heart of Memphis, in the quiet acts of kindness that built up a community, one grocery bag at a time. Sam, the former kid mopping floors, now the manager of the Piggly Wiggly, carried that legacy within him, a torch passed from the king. Call came a few months later, not from Elvis, but from one of his closest men. The voice on the other end was subdued, somber. "Sam," the voice said, "Elvis won't be coming to the Piggly Wiggly anymore. He passed away this afternoon." Sam felt a cold wave wash over him, chilling him despite the August heat. He gripped the phone, his knuckles white. It couldn't be Elvis. The king gone. It felt impossible. He was a force of nature, a permanent fixture in his life. In Memphis, the news hit Memphis like a physical blow. The city plunged into mourning. The streets filled with weeping fans. Graceland became a shrine. And the world paused to remember the king of rock and roll. He remembered the quiet conversations in the produce aisle, the shared understanding of hardship, the subtle helping hand for Sarah, the constant unwavering generosity. The store felt strangely empty in the days that followed. No private line ringing, no rumbling limousines, no familiar figure walking the aisles. Sam felt a profound sense of loss, not just for a celebrity, but for a man who had touched his life in a deeply personal way. One quiet night, a few weeks after Elvis's passing, Sam found himself alone in the store just like on his very first night. He stood by the checkout counter, looking at the neatly stocked shelves. He imagined Elvis walking the aisles, choosing items, that subtle smile on his face. Then Sam heard a small noise near the front door. He looked up into man Munder. "I'm a prov. Quandao de Crow." "Sam," he said, his voice rough, "just wanted to see how you were doing." I'm okay," Sam replied, surprised by the visit. "It's just different," the man nodded, his gaze sweeping over the store. "Yeah, it is." Paused, then continued. "Elvis, he always said this place, these buyouts, it was one of the purest things he did. He loved doing this. Said it kept him grounded." He walked over to the checkout, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a thick envelope similar to the ones Elvis used to pay with. Elvis, he made sure this would continue. He set up a trust, a fund specifically for this. The buyouts, he wanted to make sure the food kept coming for the people of Memphis. Sam stared. "Yes," the man said, a faint smile touching his lips. He never stopped caring, Sam, not for a moment. He knew he wouldn't always be here, but he wanted his giving to live on. This city meant too much to him. He handed the envelope to Sam. "The funds are deposited regularly. You just keep doing what you've been doing. Sam, keep the shelves stocked, keep the spirit alive." Sam took the envelope, his fingers trembling. It wasn't just money, it was a continuation of a legacy, a testament to an enduring spirit. Elvis was gone, but his generosity, his love for Memphis would live on, flowing through the aisles of the Piggly Wiggly out into the community, nourishing bodies and souls. In the months and years that followed, Sam kept his promise. The midnight calls didn't come anymore, but the funds did. Sam would continue to order the large shipments, carefully select the array of goods, and coordinate with the various food banks and shelters. The deliveries were still quiet, still dignified, just as Elvis had intended. Piggly Wiggly remained a pillar of the community, not just for its everyday customers, but for the silent network of charity it supported. Sam, now the longtime manager, was a guardian of that legacy. He shared the true story of Elvis with new employees, teaching them about the man behind the legend, the heart behind the buyouts. Elvis Presley was remembered for his music, his charisma, his iconic performances. But in the quiet corners of Memphis, among those who understood, he was remembered as the man who never forgot where he came from. The man who, in the dead of night, bought out grocery stores, not for himself, but for the hungry, for the struggling, for the people of his beloved city. Sam, standing in the quiet Piggly Wiggly, sometimes still felt Elvis's presence. Not as a ghost, but as an enduring spirit of generosity and love. The shelves might be full or empty, depending on the cycle, but the true essence of the Piggly Wiggly and of Memphis itself was overflowing with the legacy of the king's heartwarming kindness. It was a story etched, not in gold records, but in every shared meal, every comforting bite, every quiet act of giving that truly made Memphis legendary. And Sam was proud to be a part of it, forever carrying the spirit of the king in his heart.